Hi, I'm Robert Lovato, Tech Advisor at Security Door Controls. Did you ever ask yourself the question, how would I be able to measure the voltage at my lock? The answer is a multimeter. So today we will explore the multimeter tool and what to look for when buying one and how to use it to find your DC voltage and AC voltage, your continuity, and where to find the current flow in your circuit. To get started, let's first talk about where you would buy a multimeter. You can pick one up at your local hardware store, Radio Shack, Sears, sometimes even a dollar store. To choose which one to get, you should make sure that it's capable of measuring voltage and continuity and current. In addition, we would strongly advise you to get one that has a digital display on the front, different than the old school analog. Let's measure voltage with our multimeter. There are two different voltage symbols on your dial. There's the DC voltage and the other is your AC voltage. DC stands for direct current, and the symbol is. DC current and voltage remain constant over time. Voltage potential is measured from a known reference point commonly known as your ground. DC voltage would be measured in SDC maglocks and most of SDC's components. AC stands for alternating current and it has a symbol of. AC current voltage varies with time. This voltage is measured from a maximum negative peak to a maximum positive peak. This voltage is generally associated with household current and can be measured, for example, in your wall outlets and the AC input into SDC's power supplies. To measure DC voltage, you will need to locate your two cables. The black lead is plugged into the jack labeled COM or common. You can leave the black cable here for future measurements, as the black cable always goes to the common. The red cable is the one that will move to different ports depending upon what you want to measure. You definitely want to pay attention to your red cable, as a wrong connection can blow a fuse in your multimeter. To measure volts, we will need to plug the red cable into the port labeled volts. Next, we will need to set the dial to the DC voltage range, higher than the expected voltage. We will change the range as required. You always want to start higher and work your way down. Now we're ready to touch the red probe to the positive terminal of our device and the black to the negative terminal of our device. Don't worry if you're not sure which one is the positive and which one is the negative. If you get it wrong, your readout will be a negative number and you will actually have figured out the polarity on your device. In order to measure DC voltage on your circuit board, you will need to be very cautious to refrain from shorting anything out with your metal probes. But the procedure is the same. Touch the probes to the screw terminals, one to the positive and one to the negative terminal. On to continuity. Measuring continuity basically just means whether or not there's a good connection between two ports in a circuit, and it will show up as being almost 0 ohms. First, let's check our cables again. The black terminal in the COM or common port, and our red terminal in the jack labeled volt ohm. On my multimeter, voltage, resistance, and continuity are all accessed through the same port. For my red cable at least, but your multimeter might be different, so make sure you check every time you use your meter that your red probe is connected to the correct jack. Now set the dial to continuity setting. Test that your continuity is working correctly, or the test is by touching both probes together. Whenever you measure the continuity or the resistance, you must turn off the voltage to your device. Whenever there is almost 0 resistance between 2 points, the multimeter will beep, which is what you want to hear. You can use this to check if cables are internally broken or not. the meter does not show 0 and beeps, your circuit is interrupted. Last for today, I'm going to show you how to measure current. Let's look at our terminals. Black terminal, COM, or common port, always, and then the red terminal will be connected to the current jack. And almost all multimeters will have a separate jack for this. My multimeter has 2 different ports, current up to 10 amps and another port for current up to 200 milliamps. I usually start out with a 10 amp jack, and if I need more accuracy and the readout shows a value under 200 milliamps, switch to the milliamps jack later. So start with the red cable in the 10 amp plug and set your dial to the 10 amp DC setting. Measuring current is a little more tricky than the rest of the measurements. You can't just touch the probes to the cables and get an amperage reading. To measure the current draw by the motor, we first disconnect one of the wires. I prefer the red one, the positive wire. Now we can attach one end of the probe to each end of the circuit. Our readout shows us what our current draw is. Now that concludes this intro to multimeters. Thank you for watching. I hope that you found this information useful. Now, don't forget to check back for more tutorials on Robert's Tech Talk blog. As always, you can find documentations and installation instructions for all SDC security products on our website, sdcsecurity.com, as well as other valuable videos. Now go out and get yourself a multimeter already. I'm signing out. I'm Robert. I'm going to go test me some voltage.